Frame data is one of the most, if not the most, useful general concept that you can possibly learn if you want to get better at fighting games. And one of the main misconceptions that I've heard from people in the past, not so much recently, but in the past, there was this idea that frame data was difficult to learn, but that's just completely false. There is, usually, in most fighting games, no advanced mathematical concepts that you need to learn at all. If you want to get really good at a fighting game through frame data, you can use basic operations like addition and subtraction. But other than that, there is literally no mathematics at all. Unless you're playing a game like Guilty Gear, which is complex on purpose. So as long as you know that 4 comes before 5, and you know how to deal with negative numbers, then you have all the mathematical tools that you need in order to learn frame data. That's it. The other very big misconception is that frame data is boring. I don't like learning frame data because that's just not the kind of player I am. I like to play by feel. I don't like to play by the numbers, etc., etc. And yes, learning the specific frame data of a specific move, of a specific character in a specific fighting game is just memorization of numbers, which can get pretty boring if that's the only thing that you focus on. But that is not what I want to talk about in this video. I want to talk about general frame data concepts, which is to say, once you have some of those numbers in your brain, what do you do with them? And I think you'll find that if you don't know any of these and you learn them, that the game makes a lot more sense. Third and final disclaimer is that frame data, while important, is not literally everything. Frame data deals with durations, or like timing of things. It does not deal with the states characters are in. So for example, if you're invincible to a certain type of attack, its frame data doesn't really matter. It also doesn't deal with distances or positions on the screen, both vertically and horizontally. Frames deal entirely with time. Now, when you do things is very important, but it's not everything that exists within the game. And so now we can start talking about frame data, and I'm going to start with, well, what is a frame? And the simple definition of a frame is a unit of time. So just like a meter or centimeter or inch is a unit of length, a frame is a unit of time, just like a minute or a month is a unit of time. I guess month is not a very good example, is it? And specifically in every fighting game that I've played, the game runs at 60 frames per second, which means that one frame is equivalent to 1/60th of a second. Not every game does this. So a more complex or complete definition of the word frame is that things don't actually move, they teleport. So I can do a move like this, and it looks like he's literally moving his hand from one point to another, but he's actually not. His hand is here, and then it's here, and then it's here, and then it's here. It's not smooth motion, it is stop motion, and in fact you can actually see it if I slow the game down for you. So each one of those individual images is a frame, and everything happens on a frame. Between frames, nothing is happening in the game except for calculations for what should happen on the next frame. And now it makes sense why we want to deal in frames, is because literally everything in the game happens on a frame exactly, never in between frames, so we never have to deal with decimals or fractions at all. Everything is just on a frame. So frame data is looking at the durations of things. But there's more that we can look at there, because at some point the attack has to make contact with the opponent. It's not at the beginning, it's not at the end, it's somewhere in the middle. So there's a ton of different things to look at. Specifically, 1, how long it takes for the attacker, Seth, to do the move and fully recover. 2, when, during the animation of the attack, does the attack make contact? And 3, how long does the opponent reel from getting struck by the attack, if they do? So we tend to think of the attacker's animation as having 2 parts. There's the part before the move hits, and there's the part after the move hits. People will often try to write frame data as 3 parts, like the startup, the act, and the recovery, but I hate that. It makes no sense. That's not how the game is actually programmed. Plus, the math just works out a lot better if you think of it in terms of startup and recovery. And as far as the other player goes, the defender, I'll call them, when getting attacked, starting from the moment the attack makes contact, you go through either hit stun or block stun, depending on if you got hit or if you blocked it. And most of the time, these values are about the same, but block stun's a little bit shorter. And also, there are some moves that don't cause hit stun, they cause special states, like this one. Like, he doesn't reel, he just falls on the floor. Or this one, where he flies into the air. Or even this one, where they just get hit and follow through with this special, unique throw animation thing. Also, that move can't be blocked, so it doesn't have a block stun value. So your typical attack that follows basic rules will have total frames of animation for the attacker, startup and recovery as part of that animation with a hitbox spawning right in between them, and it will have hit stun and block stun values which are applied to the opponent when the move makes contact. And that is all of the logistics. That is all of the literal things that are happening within the game as far as basic frame data is concerned. But we can do a heck of a lot more than that, and I just want to add one layer of abstraction on top of this, and this is where you're going to get the most use out of frame data, and that is frame advantage. And frame advantage is simply asking the question, who recovers first? And this is an important question to ask because, well, whoever attacks first wins, basically. If both players do an attack with the same speed, the one who does the attack first will win. So therefore, asking who recovers first is important because that player can attack first. Even if it's just by 1 frame. If the difference is just 1 frame, if both players then attack as soon as they possibly can, in that situation, the one with the frame advantage will win. So how do you calculate frame advantage? Well, you just take the recovery part of the attacker animation and the stun animation, either hit stun or block stun, of the other character, and you find the difference between them. You subtract them. So we're taking the attacker's recovery and subtracting it from the defender's stun. So let's say the recovery is 15 frames, and the hit stun of the attack is 14 frames. So we're going to take 14 minus 15 to get -1, which is to say that the move is -1 on hit, which is not very good. So for example, I'm looking at Seth's frame data right now, and I can see that his close standing light punch is +4 on block and +7 on hit, which means that if I hit with this move, I recover 7 frames before my opponent does, or if they block the move, I recover just 4 frames before they do. Now contrast that with his close heavy punch, which is -2 on hit and -7 on block. So if you're in a situation like this, Seth has the frame advantage, because no matter what happens, he's going to recover first, whereas if he does this, no matter what happens, he's at the disadvantage. And you can think of it, most of the time, as if you're the one defending against a plus move, that is the same as if you had done a minus move, and vice versa. Or you could say being +2 is the same as the opponent being -2. So this is where the word momentum comes from. It's like, if you have frame advantage, you have the momentum, like you get to act first. Or if it's your turn, you have frame advantage, so you get to act first. But once you're conscious of the frame advantage, there are several strategies that you can now use to your advantage. I'm going to go over a few of them right now. The first of them is a link combo. So when it comes to links, all you need to know is the frame advantage on hit and the startup. So you're looking for a move with a lot of frame advantage, so very, very plus, very positive, and another move with really quick startup, like a jab or something. And the way it works is the frame advantage has to be greater than or equal to the startup of the second move. So let's look at these two moves again. This move is +7 on hit, and this move has a startup of 4. So if I do this into this, 2-hit combo. See, it says 2-hit combo because that is a link combo where the frame advantage on hit of the first is greater than the startup of the second move. That is to say, my second move is connecting with the opponent during the hit stun of the first move. So barring any burst type mechanics in the game, once the first move hits, there's no way for the opponent to dodge the second move. And in fact, you can sort of do this over and over and over again until you can't anymore, basically. And that usually means the opponent's too far away. Now, if the opponent blocks, something similar happens where the opponent is in block stun. So let's say I do a move that's +4 into a 4-frame startup attack. Well, they're not in a hit stun, they're in block stun, which means that they're forced to keep blocking. So there's nothing that the opponent can possibly do in between these two attacks. In fact, they couldn't even stop blocking if they wanted to. They have to block. And depending on the game you're playing, that might be good, that might be bad. In either case, when doing a link combo or a true block string, the opponent has no choice. They are funneled into one specific option, with certain game-specific exceptions. So that's what happens when you do a very, very, very plus attack. What if you do a very, very, very minus attack? I am going to record the dummy doing this move and then blocking. I am blocking after doing the move. Playback. Bam! I can hit them even though they tried to block, because this move is very punishable on block. So that is to say, it is more minus than the startup of my move. So let's say a move is -4 or greater, I can use a move with 4-frame startup or less to punish it. This move is -1 billion, so I can use any move that's 1 billion frame startup or less, such as this 4-frame startup move. And that is a true, guaranteed punish. They are still in the recovery of their attack when my attack connects with them. That is a punish. They cannot avoid it in any way possible, aside from certain game-specific things like that. In some modern fighting games, you have a buffer window on this to where if you're still in block stun or hit stun, you can press a button a little bit early and it'll like automatically do the attack as soon as possible. But this is one of those games where there's no buffer on normal attacks at all. So if you wanted to punish a -4 on block move with a 4-frame startup move, you have exactly 1 frame to press that button. So that's very precise and difficult, but it is possible, although that is going away as time goes on and companies make easier games with more lax inputs. But when it comes to something like this, it's so minus that you can just see it and be like, oh, I get a punish now, and then you punish it. That's how much recovery the move has. Now there's one more thing that I want to talk about, which is frame traps. So link combos and true block strings are what happen when you're very, very, very plus. Punishment is what happens when a move is very, 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 very minus. Frame traps sort of occur when it's not too high, but also not too negative. It's somewhere close to 0 or within 1 or 2 frames. So let's say I do this move. This move is +2 on block. This is his medium punch. So it's very squarely in between the +4 of this move and the -7 of this move. It's at +2. So that's not enough for me to get a true block string, because I don't have an attack that hits in 2 frames. That's just not something I have access to. But that doesn't mean that my turn is over. Again, just having +1 is enough to make my attack start before theirs, and assuming we are both using attacks of the same speed, my attack will connect before theirs. And in fact, in that way, this might be even better than being +4, because if I do a +4 move into a 4 frame, they don't even have a chance to mess up. They can't get hit. Whereas if I do a +2 move into something that's like 3, 4, or 5 frame startup, that puts a tiny gap in between their block stun running out and my second attack connecting, but it's not a big enough gap to where they can take advantage of it. So assuming the game doesn't have any attack that starts up instantly in 1 frame, having a small gap can be very useful because it gives the opponent a chance to try to attack when the gap wasn't big enough for them to attack. So for example, let's say I set the dummy to do 2 moves. The first move is +3 on block, and the second move has 6 frame startup. That puts a gap in between of just 3 frames, so I can block the first one. But if I try to do my 4 frame attack, it's not going to work, because the gap is only 3 frames. Now, if I do a 3 frame attack, I'll trade. So that's why you need to know the magic number of your fighting game, or at least of your opponent's character. And in this game, the magic number is 3. And what is the magic number? The magic number is, what is the fastest attack my opponent can do? So you need all your frame traps to be able to beat that number. So in this case, the frame trap that I've done is exactly 3, which means that it will trade with 3 frame attacks. So I would probably want to find a different frame trap with a gap of 2, so that I will beat 3 frame attacks. And don't forget what I said about minus and plus. Being plus is the same as the opponent being minus. So if the opponent does a move that's minus 2, you can't punish them per se, because you don't have a 2 frame startup attack, unless you're certain characters. But your attack will still come out before their attack, which means that you can frame trap. So you can do, let's say, a 4 frame move, they're minus 2, you do a 4 frame move, so your attack will hit after a 2 frame gap, which means that any 3 frame or slower attack that they try will just get hit. But at this point, we're getting into game specifics and we're branching out beyond things that I wanted to cover in this video. With all that out of the way, I should say that I've already made this tutorial just in text format, and I'm deciding now to make it into a video. And in fact, I was actually using it as sort of a script when making this video. And now you know how to trap frames.